When the internet began, bulletin board services, or BBS, became the first online communities of the so-called information superhighway. Using their phone lines, people logged in from all over America to talk about sports, games, movies, and on one BBS in particular, share their ghost stories. Over time, those communities all went dark, except for one lone server that continues to operate somewhere in an unknown part of Pennsylvania's Rust Belt. A relic of the 1990s, veiled in mystery, it is a digital archive of humanity's strangest encounters with the unknown, as told by the people who experienced them. My name is Brandon Schexnayder, and you are listening to Fear Daily.
Subject: Skin Deep. User: SteenJK81. Posted May 12, 1998.
Wyatt was the most beautiful man I'd ever seen. I know that's not a common way to describe men, even the good-looking ones, but anything else would be inaccurate. He wasn't handsome or rugged or manly or however else you might describe a man so as to not make him sound feminine. With his high cheekbones, soft lips, emerald eyes, and perfectly styled blonde hair, he was quite simply beautiful, and I've never been more afraid of anyone in my entire life. I met him on my lunch break while on my way to get an order from the Chinese place down the road from work. My husband, Ken, had to bring the car in for an oil change that morning, meaning my only option for lunch was to walk. Winter has never been my favorite season, but with my right knee being unreliable since our accident in '92, I really hate having to deal with the ice and slush. Looking out the front window of the office, I saw that the flurries we'd seen on the way in had stopped, and the city plows had actually been out, that even salted the sidewalks, a minor miracle. I said a silent thank you, then told Julia, our junior receptionist, that I was headed to Cantonese Kitchen and wouldn't be long. The dental office where I work is in an odd little industrial area in Omaha. I say odd because it's such a hodgepodge of building styles with low-rise brick offices next to more modern steel and glass fortresses for some of those internet businesses that keep popping up. You'll also see 2- and 3-story apartment buildings mixed in there, along with the odd single-family home, all of it separated by oceans of parking lots I've never seen more than half full. For all the businesses headquartered there, you might think you'd see more people on the street, even if just at lunch, but you'd be wrong. What little traffic comes through is usually pickup trucks in a hurry to get to the interstate. If not for the police station kitty corner to us, it's doubtful any of us girls would feel safe enough to walk even the 5 minutes to the restaurant. Now, there's no chance you'll ever catch me doing that again. I didn't notice the man I'd come to know as Wyatt on the walk over to Cantonese Kitchen, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything, as I was very much up in my own head. Earlier that morning, I discovered one of the other admin staff had been booking patients for Dr. Pendergast during a week when he was going to be away on vacation. To make matters worse, that receptionist, whose name I won't drop here, but if you're reading this, you know who you are, mysteriously called in sick this morning, meaning it was my job to make dozens of rescheduling calls to what were gonna be very pissed off patients. I didn't even realize I was on autopilot until I was outside the door of the restaurant. A voice that sounded as rich as pouring coffee in a Folgers commercial said, "Let me get that for you." I jumped a little and looked to see a man so good-looking it actually took my breath away for a moment. He was at least 6 inches taller than me, so call it 6 feet, wearing a stylish black winter coat over a red button-up and gray tie combo. His shoes were brown and polished to a high shine, which would stand out to me later when I had time to process everything. I'm usually good at recognizing clothing brands, but nothing about his outfit looked familiar, as if everything had been custom tailored for him in such a way as to show off his lean, obviously toned body to the greatest effect. I took all this in, managing to stumble out a reply. "I'm sorry, what?" He smiled, his teeth white and perfect. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to startle you. I was offering to hold the door open." I managed to look away from his face to see his hand was resting on the door latch. I couldn't help noticing that his nails were trimmed, the cuticles clean and smooth. Oh, of course, thank you." He pulled open the door, letting out a rush of warm air from inside. All of a sudden, my stomach flipped and I thought I was going to be sick. He must have seen it on my face because he let the door fall closed again and stepped closer to me. "Are you okay?" I've never in my life been that close to someone so good looking, but it had the opposite effect you might expect. Instead of being even remotely excited, his proximity intensified the sudden nausea. I placed a hand over my mouth. He moved back, giving me space. "You know what?" he said. "I bet it was the mixture of the cold outside and all that heat from the restaurant. I get that sometimes." It was hard for me to imagine him experiencing any kind of discomfort. His every movement was smooth and precise, as if he was the showroom model version of a person. After a few moments, the nausea subsided enough for me to feel more or less myself again. "All better?" he asked solicitously. "Yes, thank you." I cocked my head, really taking him in. He really was dazzling, yet something about him pinged my radar, though I couldn't say exactly what. "Are you going inside too?" Another smile Colgate would have killed to sponsor, and he nodded. "Yes, ma'am, I sure am. I'm Wyatt, by the way." The hand that wasn't on the door reached out as if to shake hands. It was such a natural thing to do that I went to accept it before I'd even had the thought, and that's when the radar began pinging even louder. A voice in my right ear whispered, "Don't touch him. He's not real until you touch him." It was so unexpected, I gasped and took a step backward. At the same time, his eyes flickered toward the same side of my head. Had he heard it too? I looked around. There was no one nearby. "Did you?" I trailed off. His smile was a grin now, exposing too many teeth. "Did I what?" His voice was so smooth, so calming, he still held his hand out toward me. "Nothing." I put on my own best plastic customer service smile. "I thought I heard a voice. It was probably just someone inside." He ignored me. "You still haven't told me your name." The wind, which had been at my back, switched direction and started blowing my direction. It brought his cologne with it, a heady, spicy scent that smelled just like my grandfather used to. It was a smell I associated with the comfort of childhood. Just below it, though, there was something else, something musty and dank and repellent. His hand was still hovering in front of me, too, and I couldn't help but think about the anglerfish I'd seen in a National Geographic documentary Ken had watched once. They're horrible, toothy things that live in the bottom of the ocean and lure other fish in with a fake light hanging out the front of their heads. It was a predator, its prey lured in by a bright, shining facade. My blood ran cold. The smile dropped away from Wyatt's face, his hand pulling back to his side. He turned to look at the air to my right and spoke as if a third person I couldn't see was present. "Bitch, you can't save them all." When his eyes turned back to me, They were ablaze with anger like I've never seen before. I stumbled backwards. I know your name, Claire. I know where you live. I know what kind of cereal you like. I know that you're still afraid of the darkness in your closet, under your bed. And you should be, Claire, because that's where I live. The restaurant's door swung outward, separating us. The sudden movement and ringing bell made me jump. Henry, the owner, was standing there, a look of concern on his face. Claire, you okay? I frowned. It looked like you were talking to someone. I leaned to my left, trying to see around Henry. Wyatt was gone. There was a man there just now. He said his name was Wyatt. Henry shook his head. I've had an eye on you since you walked up. It's just been you this whole time. I thought maybe you had a cell phone. I was at a loss for words. The street was empty all around us. Nowhere for him to hide. The memory of that whisper came back to me. Don't touch him. He's not real until you touch him. I shivered.
Subject: A Very Jerry Christmas. User: Tracks Time. Posted December 18th, 1997.
Jesse and I have been living in this house for almost 5 years now, and not until today have we received mail for a previous occupant. The circumstances of the letter's arrival were almost as weird as its contents. Neither Jessica nor I even heard the mailman pull up, and yet when I opened the door to head out to work, a weathered envelope marked with the logo of something called Anthony's Department Store was leaning against the front door. It was addressed to someone named Phil Davidson, care of our house, but it's not a name either of us has heard before. Jesse thinks it's a prank, and I'm inclined to agree. Still, maybe someone out there can make sense of it. The full text of it is below. While you read, I'm gonna go take a look at the basement stairs for reasons that'll soon become clear. Dear Phil, I hope you and Lindsay are having a great Christmas together. Are you still living in the same place? I guess if you're not, someone else is reading this and you've moved on. Or maybe you haven't moved in yet. Depending on the year, it might even be a while until you're born. Hey, before I get going, if someone other than Phil or Lindsay is reading this, can I get you to be cool and just put the letter back in the envelope? What you're gonna read here won't make much sense without all the backstory, and some of it might sound like actual crimes, which they are not, mostly. The third step in your basement staircase is loose. Pull it up and leave this under there. If you're reading this before May 2003, do not touch the small wooden case you find. Leave the envelope on top of it and go about your day. In exchange, I give you some free advice. Buy stock in Versus Systems Inc. right now, then sell it in 2004. Use the money to buy a house somewhere else. Oh, and avoid flying anywhere in September of 2001. No reason. All right, Phil or Lindsay or both, since the other guy is gone, I gotta say, shit has been real weird since the whole amulet thing. Time has been harder and harder to keep a handle on, and I don't mean in the whole, oh boy, I've got so much to do that time just flies by way. It's been more, oh shit, I went to sleep in my apartment in 2005 and woke up next to a bus shelter in 1981 Brooklyn. Have you guys had that problem? I know I held on to it for longer than either of you did, so maybe that's why the slippage has been so unpredictable. Me and Gollum both fucked up by the One Ring. As it stands right now, I'm writing this at the menswear counter of an Anthony's in Palm Beach, Florida. It's Friday, August 4th, 1972, and up until an hour ago, the place has been jumping with leathery-skinned retirees looking to cash in on our knitwear sale. Burt Reynolds actually came in last week, and let me tell you, what an absolute asshole. When he was about to leave, I said, "Enjoy the hairline while it lasts, Smokey," and he smacked me right in the mouth. It wasn't until afterward that I realized Smokey and the Bandit won't be out for a few years yet. Whatever. It was worth it to piss him off, that mustachioed bitch. Phil, I miss you, man. You were my best friend for a lot of years, and even before the amulet, we made it through some shit together. Are you still mad at me for shooting your grandmother in the face? Because if so, I have some great news. It wasn't actually her, and I have proof. Kind of. See, my last stop before here was in New York City in 1879. Let me tell you, while 1972 may not represent the peak of deodorant technology compared to the Gilded Age, it's practically sterile. Don't let the paintings or that Scorsese movie fool you. Everyone and everywhere back then smelled like a litter box doused in perfume. It was a bad time. When I first land in a time period, my clothes almost never make sense for the era, so depending on how suspicious people are, it can take a while for anyone to talk to me. Helena, though, she approached me almost immediately after I was nearly run over by a horse-drawn carriage full of smelly rich assholes on their way to what I'm sure was some equally filthy opera house. Helena was Russian and very interested in a stranger who clearly didn't belong in this particular time and place. She was a bit of a character, with some of that Madame Cleo energy. In her defense, I'm sure it went over big with people from back then. It's just that when you fought off flying black-eyed monsters with a broomstick, someone running their hands over a crystal ball doesn't register the same way. When I told her my story, she was excited and a little pissed off, probably because she didn't want to be upstaged in her shtick by some asshole in sweatpants and a Garfield hoodie. Not that she knew who Garfield was, and I asked, gesturing toward the crystal ball as if to suggest that you had a hotline for this stuff. No, I think it was more that she'd hoped confirmation of her beliefs might come via a burning bush or many-eyed angel instead of some guy who wanted to talk about a cat that likes lasagna. Anyways, I told Helena our story about us finding that box under your stairs, opening it up to find a glowing amulet that stung when you touched it in a way that kind of felt good. I told her how Lindsay had shown up, demanding to be included, then pointed out the amulet was probably cursed after I'd worn it to do my Flava Flav impression. Then, of course, your house fell into an alternate version of town where it was always night and we had to fight wave after wave of the undead on our way to the return portal at the hydroelectric dam. Blah, blah, blah. For someone who talked a lot about the dark arts, she sure had issues with my diagram showing exactly where on a gargoyle to insert a sharpened broomstick for maximum effect. Go figure. She said it made sense that the dam would be a nexus point because something about water being a conduit for energy, maybe. Between her accent and the smell, man, it was hard to pay attention. The thing is, when I told her that your dead grandmother appeared and tried to stop us going, she said that it probably wasn't even really her, that some entities will take the form of the people we love the most to deceive us. So, in effect, not only did I very likely save our lives, I didn't even have to kill your grandmother again to do it. Not that I killed her the first time, to be clear, so please don't be mad, man. Also, don't you think it's kind of funny that the person you loved most didn't turn out to be Lindsay? Come on, that's pretty good, isn't it? Just kidding, Linz. I love you. Look, I'd write more, but that son of a bitch Bert is back for round 2. I'm gonna give it to him so hard his mustache runs for cover in his balls. I hope you guys are doing well and not also free-falling through time. To the guy currently living in Phil and Lindsay's place, you suck for reading this letter when I asked you not to. Forget what I said about not flying in September '01. Go ahead and book that plane ticket, you nosy bastard. I hear 11 is a lucky number. All my love, Jerry.
Fear Daily is an independent podcast hosted by Brandon Schexnayder and written by Brennan Storr, with Joanna Smith serving as the consulting editor, audio production by Rachel Boyd, and sound design by Southern Gothic Media. This podcast is a work of fiction. Names, characters, places, and incidents are either products of the author's imagination or are used fictitiously. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or to real events or locations, is entirely coincidental. Ad-free versions of Fear Daily are available now on your favorite podcast apps. For more information, visit feardaily.com. But move fast, before the server goes offline.